My name is Melinda Carter, and I'm about to tell you how I turned the ultimate betrayal into a moment they'll never forget. Which is corporate speak for, I absolutely destroyed my sister's wedding, and honestly, I'd do it again. Picture this, if you will. My sister, my own flesh and blood, the person who shared a womb vicinity with me, stole my fiancé right under my nose. Then, because the universe has a truly twisted sense of humor, she had the audacity, the unmitigated gall, to invite me to their wedding at a swanky oceanfront resort in Miami. She smirked, patted my shoulder like I was a particularly dim family pet, and whispered, "Your gift is perfect." I stayed silent, clutching that envelope, because what does one say to that? "Congratulations on shagging my fiancé, sis. Hope the sexual tension was worth the family drama." Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. Because nothing says family bonding quite like crowdsourcing your global audience whilst your sister plots matrimony with your ex. Now, fast forward to the ceremony. 200 guests. Yes, 200, because subtlety died somewhere around 2015, whispering as the projector flickers to life. The priest, bless him, asks that age-old question. Does anyone object? I stand up, holding a USB drive like it's Excalibur. I have something they need to see. My sister's face drains of color faster than my bank account after a Waitrose shop as the video starts playing, revealing a truth that terrifies them both. But I'm getting ahead of myself, aren't I? Let's rewind this disaster, shall we? A few months earlier, I'd come home early from a client meeting in downtown Miami. The humidity was sticking to my skin like a bad memory, which is really the only type of memory Miami seems capable of producing. My flat in South Beach overlooked the ocean. Because of course it did. This is Miami, darling, where even your heartbreak comes with a view. But that day, the view didn't matter. Because I heard noises from the bedroom. Laughs. Whispers that very much weren't meant for my ears. The sort of sounds that make your stomach drop faster than Bitcoin in a bear market. Pushing the door open, there they were, Misty and Brent, tangled up together on my sheets. My Egyptian cotton, 400 thread count sheets, if we're being specific. And we absolutely are, because when your life implodes, the details matter. My stomach dropped. Brent jumped up, grabbing a pillow to cover himself, because that's what you do when caught mid-betrayal. Apparently, protect your modesty, stammering excuses that would make a politician blush. "Melinda, this isn't what it looks like." "Oh, I'm sorry. Was I meant to believe you were giving her a very thorough medical examination? Teaching her advanced Pilates? Demonstrating the Kama Sutra for purely academic purposes?" Misty just sat there, pulling the blanket around herself, a smug look crossing her face before she, and this is truly Oscar-worthy, faked tears. "Sis, it just happened. We didn't mean to hurt you." "Right. Yes. People just accidentally fall onto each other, clothes mysteriously evaporating in the process. It's practically a medical condition. I didn't scream or throw things, much as every cell in my body was screaming for a bit of justified property damage. I stood frozen, the betrayal hitting like a wave crashing on the beach outside. Brent was my fiancé, the bloke I'd planned a life with, our wedding at that resort, our future in this vibrant city that was now permanently ruined for me. Thanks ever so. And Misty, my little sister, the one who'd always been the one who took what she wanted, had truly outdone herself this time. But this was a new low even for her. And that's saying something, because Misty's previous lows include stealing my prom date, my scholarship, and apparently any shred of sisterly decency she might have once possessed. I kicked them out that night, watching Brent scramble for his clothes like a particularly pathetic game show contestant, whilst Misty acted like the victim. "You're overreacting," she said, slipping on her dress with the casual air of someone who's just popped round for tea, not destroy their sister's life. The door slammed behind them, and I collapsed on the sofa. The South Beach nightlife buzzing outside like nothing had changed, which was really rather rude of it if you ask me. Everything had changed. My entire future had just walked out the door with my sister. Brilliant. Over the next few weeks, the whispers started at family gatherings. Our parents, with their multicultural roots that they bang on about at every possible opportunity, had always favored Misty's energy. Dad's old-school American business vibe and Mom's Latin flair from her side created this perfect storm of favoritism that would make even the Kardashians say, "Steady on, that's a bit much." "Misty's just passionate," Mom would say, her accent slipping in when she got excited, which was constantly when discussing her favorite daughter. Dad nodded along like one of those dashboard dogs, avoiding my eyes with the dedication of a man who knows he's cocked up but simply cannot face it. They'd always been like this, mind you. Misty would light up rooms with her stories of Miami parties whilst I was the steady one, building my career in finance. How terribly boring of me, being financially responsible and not shagging other people's fiancés. Then the invitation arrived. Misty showed up at my door. Unannounced, naturally, because boundaries are just suggestions to narcissists, envelope in hand. She patted my shoulder with that fake sympathy that made me want to slap her hand away like a particularly aggressive mosquito, smirking as she said, "Your gift is perfect." I took it without a word. The pearl cardstock felt heavy, like it was weighted with the sheer audacity of the situation. Inside were the details for their wedding at the same oceanfront resort I'd booked for Brent and me. Yes, you read that correctly. My sister was getting married at my venue, with my plans, using my vendors. It was like she'd gone shopping in my life and decided to purchase the entire bloody shop. The handwritten note read, "Family celebrates family. Come see real happiness." It was a slap, a calculated, deliberate slap delivered on expensive stationery. Using my plans, my vendors, rubbing salt in the wound with the enthusiasm of a Michelin-starred chef. I stared at it for hours, the Miami sun setting over the bay, turning the water gold, whilst I contemplated whether murder would really be that bad if it was justified. That's when I rang Rhonda, my best friend since university. We'd met at a finance seminar in Brickell, bonded over terrible coffee and mutual ambition. "Don't go," she said over the phone, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "It's a trap to humiliate you." But I couldn't let it slide. I couldn't just sit at home, eating ice cream and crying into my Egyptian cotton pillowcases. "I'm going," I told her. "And I'm making sure they remember it." Rhonda paused, the sort of pause that suggested she was mentally preparing bail money. "What are you planning?" I didn't have the full picture yet, but the seed was planted. Misty thought she'd won, with her vibrant life stealing my steady one. But in Miami, where fortunes flip like ocean waves, things change fast. And I was about to become a bloody tsunami. The family dynamic had always been skewed, like a painting hung slightly off-center that slowly drives you mad. Growing up in South Beach with its mix of cultures and endless energy, Misty thrived on the chaos, beach parties, late nights, the sort of lifestyle that looks brilliant on Instagram, but is actually exhausting if you have any responsibility whatsoever. I focused on stability, interning at Dad's finance firm near Biscayne Bay, while she flitted through jobs like a particularly indecisive butterfly. Mom, with her Latin heritage, saw Misty as the lively spirit, always defending her. "She's got fire, Vicky," Dad would say, whilst Dad, Randall, nodded along, too busy with dodgy deals to notice the favoritism that was so blatant it might as well have had its own postcode. They'd thrown Misty a massive Sweet 16 bash on the beach, complete with fireworks. Fireworks! For a 16-year-old. Meanwhile, I got a quiet dinner for my graduation from the University of Miami. Because obviously, completing a degree is far less important than surviving another year of adolescence. Now, with Brent, it was the ultimate theft. The piece de resistance in Misty's greatest hits album of taking my things. I started digging quietly, ringing old contacts in finance. Because if there's one thing working in finance teaches you, it's that everyone's hiding something, and if you look hard enough, you'll find it. Brent's investments were smoke, gambling debts from Miami casinos, maxed cards, and worse. He'd opened credit lines in my name. Fraud that could tank my credit score faster than you can say identity theft. The anger built, but I channeled it. Because screaming into the void is cathartic, but revenge is a dish best served with a full PowerPoint presentation and receipts. Rhonda met me at a cafe overlooking the bay. "You need proof," she said, sipping her café con leche with the intensity of a detective in a particularly gripping Netflix series. We brainstormed, piecing together timelines like we were investigating a murder rather than just my sister's spectacular ability to ruin lives. That's when Corey Blaine texted me out of the blue. I'd known him vaguely. Misty's ex from a couple of years back, another casualty in her wake. Heard about the wedding, his message read. Got something you might want. Oh, this was getting interesting. We met at a quiet spot in Coconut Grove. Corey, still bitter from how Misty had dumped him, and who could blame him, really, handed over files like we were in a spy thriller. She left me for Brent after he promised money, but he's broke. Listen to this. He played an audio file. Brent's voice, crystal clear, boasting. Borrowed $200,000 from Randall's firm. Easy money. Nobody checks. I felt like I'd won the lottery, except instead of money, I'd won the ability to absolutely destroy someone's life. Corey's eyes narrowed. Use it. She deserves it. I nodded, the pieces falling into place like the world's most satisfying jigsaw puzzle. Back home, Gerald Norton, Ethel's lawyer, a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a particularly stern Dickens novel, rang. Your grandmother's will activate soon. Conditions are strict. No debts, no fraud in marriages, just Ethel, my grandmother, the only one who'd seen through the family's nonsense. She documented everything in her journal, everything. Misty's patterns, the theft, the favoritism. She'd seen it all, and, in a move that was both brilliant and slightly terrifying, had planned for exactly this scenario. I spent nights editing, weaving Corey's audio with Ethel's recorded words from her old videos, adding timelines of the affair, check-ins at Key West resorts months before I found out, because apparently they couldn't even be bothered to be discreet about their betrayal. The video grew to 6 minutes and 40 seconds. A bomb, ready to drop like the world's most devastating wedding gift. Rhonda watched the final cut. This will destroy them. I smiled for the first time in weeks. That's rather the point, isn't it? As the wedding approached, Miami's heat mirrored my resolve. Misty had taken everything. Now I take back what mattered. My dignity, my inheritance, and possibly my sister's sanity. Call it a fair trade. Looking back, the favoritism started early in our South Beach home, where the multicultural vibe shaped everything in ways that a therapist would have an absolute field day with. Mum's Latin roots made her adore Misty's flair, the way she danced to salsa at family barbecues, charming everyone with her stories, whilst I stood in the corner wondering if anyone would notice if I just left. Dad, with his American business mindset, saw Misty as the charismatic one who could network at Miami events. I was the quiet achiever, studying finance whilst they praised Misty's spirit, which is code for, we like this child more but can't quite say it out loud. One entry in Ethel's journal hit particularly hard, the prom night mess. I'd saved for months to buy that blue gown, excited for my date with a lad from school. But Misty borrowed it without asking, by which I mean she stole it, claiming it fitted her better. When I confronted her, she laughed it off. You can wear something else, sis. I'm the one who lights up the room. Dad sided with her, naturally. Let Misty have it. She's got that spark. Mum added, family shares, Melinda. Right, yes, because forcing your daughter to give up her prom dress is exactly what healthy families do. I ended up in an old dress, watching Misty steal the spotlight, which I'm sure didn't create any lasting psychological damage whatsoever. Ethel noted it all. Misty takes. Melinda gives. Randall and Vicky blind to the damage. Cheers, Grandma. Nice to know someone was paying attention. Another page detailed the scholarship drama. I'd worked tirelessly on my art portfolio for the University of Miami Award, volunteering at local galleries, perfecting designs inspired by Miami's Art Deco scene. The night before submission, it vanished from my room. Absolutely vanished, like it had been kidnapped by art-thieving elves. Misty found it later, soaked from an accidental spill. She submitted her own version, using my ideas with her twists. And by twists, I mean she basically photocopied my work and added her name. I deserve it more, she said when confronted. You can apply next year. The committee awarded her the full ride. Dad beamed at dinner. Misty's got talent. Mum hugged her. So proud of your creativity. Ethel wrote. Melinda's work stolen again. Vicky dismissed her tears as jealousy. I see the pattern. Must protect the steady one. At least someone understood that what was happening was, in fact, completely mental. The Corey Blaine incident sealed Ethel's concerns. I dated him briefly after university. A solid bloke who appreciated my ambition and didn't think steady was code for boring. Misty met him at a family gathering, flirted openly because boundaries mean nothing to her, and weeks later claimed he'd pursued her. "He said you're too serious," she told me, as if that justified anything. They dated 3 months before she dumped him for someone more exciting, because long-term relationships require actual effort, and Misty's allergic to that. Corey later confided in me. She lied about everything. Said you were controlling. Because of course she did. Ethel's entry. Misty poached Corey with false pregnancy scare. Broke Melinda's trust. Vicky laughed it off as youthful drama. Time to act. That's when Ethel consulted Gerald in 2023, drafting the will. Assets to Melinda if she weds first, with conditions that would make a lawyer weep with joy at their specificity. She confided in her notes. Misty unqualified. Too impulsive. Ethel passed in January. Her journal was hidden until Gerald delivered it post-betrayal. Reading it in my flat overlooking the bay, I felt her presence. The quiet ones endure, she wrote, but they rise strongest. Corey's recent contact echoed that. Misty had burned him too, motivating his help. The journal connected all the dots from prom theft to scholarship sabotage, leading straight to Brent. Ethel had foreseen it all, her multicultural wisdom seeing through the family's bias. Mum's Latin passion favored Misty's fire. Dad's deals ignored the cost. I closed the book, resolve hardening. Ethel's legacy wasn't just money. It was justice, served ice cold with a side of vindication. With Ethel's journal fueling my righteous fury, I dove into action with the dedication of someone who's finally found their life's purpose. Corey's message had opened a door, and I wasn't about to let it close. Not when there was chaos to orchestrate. We met again at a dimly lit diner in Coconut Grove, away from South Beach's neon glow, because when you're planning to destroy someone's wedding, you really ought to do it somewhere atmospheric. Corey slid a USB drive across the table like we were in a particularly low-budget spy film. This is Brent's confession, he said, voice low and dramatic. Caught him bragging at a bar last month. Thought he was untouchable. I plugged it into my laptop, headphones on, and listened to Brent's voice crackle through. Borrowed $200,000 from Randall's firm. Easy money. Nobody checks. My jaw tightened. That was fraud. Plain and simple. The sort of fraud that could land you in prison if someone, say, a scorned ex-fiancé, happened to have evidence. Tied to Dad's company, no less. This was getting better by the minute. He's been bleeding the accounts dry. Corey leaned forward, enjoying this far too much, but then again, so was I. Misty's in on it, pushing him to take more. I saved the file, my mind racing faster than a Ferrari on the Miami motorway. This wasn't just personal anymore. It was illegal. Provably, undeniably illegal. And I could prove it. Next stop was Gerald Norton's office. Tucked in a sleek high-rise near Biscayne Bay, the sort of office that screams, expensive legal proceedings ahead. Gerald greeted me with a stack of papers thick enough to murder someone with. Your grandmother's will is airtight, he said, adjusting his glasses with the satisfaction of a man who's written a truly bulletproof legal document. Carter Financial, worth £8 million. Goes to you if you marry before Misty, or stay single. No debt-ridden spouses, no fraudsters. He pointed to a clause with irreverence, usually reserved for religious texts. Misty's engagement to Brent disqualifies her. His debts and dodgy deals void any claim. Ethel had planned for this. Her wisdom outsmarting the family's chaos from beyond the grave, which is both impressive and slightly unsettling. Gerald handed me a video file from her archives, recorded a year ago. Ethel's voice, steady as ever. Melinda's the only one who values legacy over greed. Protect her share. I gripped the USB, knowing it was gold. Actual, literal gold. If gold could destroy lives and marriages. Back at my flat, I rang Rhonda. We're building a case, I told her, pacing the hardwood floor like a detective in a crime drama, except the crime was familial betrayal, and the punishment was public humiliation. She arrived with her laptop, ready to edit, because that's what best friends do. They help you create elaborate revenge presentations. We worked through the night, Miami skyline glittering outside like it was trying to be inspirational. First, we verified Corey's audio with my old CPA contact, Lisa, who'd audited Dad's firm years ago. Brent moved $180,000 to a joint account with Misty, she confirmed over coffee and Brickell, her expression suggesting this was simultaneously the most professional and most deliciously dramatic thing she'd done all year. It's fraud. The IRS would eat him alive. I pulled bank records, timestamps showing transfers from March, months before I'd caught them. They'd been planning this for ages, which somehow made it worse. This wasn't a spontaneous moment of passion. It was premeditated life-ruining. Next, we dug into Dad's books. Gerald sent an audit file that was basically a greatest hits of financial crimes. Randall had siphoned $500,000 for consulting fees to offshore accounts. Gerald noted, the quotation marks audible in his voice. Vicky doesn't know. Your father's been reckless. That was embezzlement. A federal offense in Florida. The sort of thing that comes with prison time and a lifetime of shame. Brilliant. The affair timeline came together with embarrassing ease. I hacked into Brent's social media. Careless passwords made it laughably simple. Honestly, if you're going to commit fraud, at least use better cybersecurity. Photos from September showed him and Misty at a Key West resort, arms around each other, when he was still my fiancé. The metadata pinned the dates. Undeniable proof that they'd been carrying on for months. Rhonda stitched it all together into a masterpiece. Ethel's video warning about Misty, Brent's fraud confession, bank records exposing Dad's theft, and the affair photos. 6 minutes, 40 seconds, she said, hitting save with the satisfaction of an artist completing their magnum opus. This will hit like a hurricane. We tested it on my telly. The audio was crisp, visuals damning. Every frame screamed betrayal, personal and financial. It was beautiful in the way that utter destruction can be beautiful. The final piece was timing. Gerald confirmed the will's conditions activated the day of the wedding. Perfect timing for maximum impact, really. Like a perfectly choreographed disaster. If the IRS gets this, Randall's done, Lisa said when I rang her again, double-checking the numbers because when you're about to nuke someone's life, you really ought to be thorough. Fines. Maybe prison. Corey texted, offering a cloud backup. If they try to stop you, I'll leak it online. I nodded, saving the file to my drive, feeling calmer than I had in months. Miami's heat pressed against my windows, but I felt focused, steady. The video wasn't just evidence, it was a weapon, sharpened by Ethel's foresight and my determination. Rhonda shut her laptop. They won't see this coming. I looked at the USB. Its weight heavy in my hand but also oddly satisfying. Neither will the guests at that resort. The morning of the wedding, I stood in my South Beach flat, staring at the mirror like I was preparing for battle. Which, in fairness, I absolutely was. The white dress, sleek, tailored, not bridal but elegant enough to turn heads and cause exactly the right amount of confusion, hugged my frame perfectly. It wasn't about stealing Misty's spotlight. It was about claiming mine, which she'd been dimming for approximately 3 decades. I fastened a silver bracelet, a gift from Ethel, engraved with "Truth Wins." The words felt like armor, or possibly a threat. Both seemed appropriate. My phone buzzed with a text from Randall, my father, his tone sharp as ever. "Don't show up today, Melinda. You'll embarrass our family." I laughed bitterly, picturing him in his office near Biscayne Bay, still thinking he could control me like I was a particularly disobedient employee. "You've embarrassed me for years," I texted back. "Today's my turn." He rang immediately, his voice booming through the speaker with all the authority of a man who's about to lose absolutely everything. "This is about unity, Melinda. Our multicultural family sticks together. Misty's the glue." "Oh, brilliant. Misty's the glue. The woman who steals fiancés is apparently what holds us together. That's absolutely mental." I cut him off. "Misty's the thief, Dad. I'm done playing your game." He sputtered, but I hung up. My hands were steady for the first time in months. Vicky, my mother, tried next. Her message popped up as I slipped on my heels. 50,000 pounds to stay home. "We can't have drama at the resort." Her Latin flair always came with a price. Parties, charm, and now bribes. 50,000 pounds. To not attend my own sister's wedding to my ex-fiancé. The sheer audacity was almost admirable. I blocked her number without replying, the audacity burning in my chest hotter than Miami's relentless sun. She'd stood by whilst Misty took everything, from prom dresses to my bloody fiancé, always excusing it as her fire. Not today. Today, I was the one with fire, and I was about to burn their perfect day to the ground. I tucked the USB into my Chanel clutch, another keepsake from Ethel, because she had taste, its weight grounding me. The video, 6 minutes and 40 seconds of pure, unfiltered truth, was ready to unravel their lies like a particularly aggressive knitting mishap. I checked my reflection one last time. The Miami sun streaming through my window, casting sharp shadows that made me look rather dramatic, if I do say so myself. This wasn't about anger anymore. It was about justice. Vengeance. Possibly therapy, but we'd deal with that later. Corey rang as I grabbed my keys. "Video's backed up on the cloud," he said, voice tense with anticipation. "If they try to stop you at the resort, I'll stream it live." I nodded, though he couldn't see me. "Thanks, Corey. You didn't have to do this." He snorted. "Misty burned me too. Consider it payback." His bitterness matched mine, a reminder of how she discarded him after her lies, like he was a particularly disappointing handbag. I drove to the oceanfront resort, the Miami skyline fading behind me, taking with it any last vestiges of doubt. The venue was exactly as I'd planned for my wedding. String lights, white roses, the ocean's hum in the background. Every detail screamed my work, stolen by Misty's greed and weaponized against me. Charming. I parked, took a deep breath that tasted of salt and vindication, and stepped out. The bracelet glinted under the sun like a beacon of incoming chaos. Inside, the lobby buzzed with guests, friends, family, Miami's elite, all completely unaware that they were about to witness the social equivalent of a nuclear explosion. A coordinator, Mrs. Ellis, rushed toward me, her face pale like she'd seen a ghost, or possibly just realized I was about to ruin everything. "Miss Carter, we didn't expect you," she stammered, clutching her clipboard like a life raft. I held up the invitation, pearl cardstock gleaming with expensive mockery. I was invited. She stammered something else, but I walked past, heading for the ceremony hall with the determination of someone who's got absolutely nothing left to lose. My parents were already seated near the front, Randall's jaw tight, Vicky fanning herself dramatically because apparently we're living in a Jane Austen novel now. They spotted me, their eyes narrowing at my white dress, because how dare I wear white to a wedding I wasn't supposed to attend? I ignored them, sliding into a back row seat, the USB secure in my clutch like a particularly devastating secret. Misty's bridesmaids whispered nearby, their pastel dresses a mockery of my original plans. "She's got some nerve," one muttered, loud enough for me to hear, which was rather the point, wasn't it? I kept my gaze forward, calm and focused, channeling every meditation app I'd ever downloaded and immediately deleted. The string quartet started, signaling the beginning of what would soon become the most memorable wedding Miami had ever seen, and not in a good way. I felt the weight of eyes. 200 guests, some curious, some judging, all about to get the show of their lives. My parents turned, Randall's glare burning holes in my back, Vicky's lips pursed tighter than a particularly judgmental cat's bottom. They thought they could buy or bully me into silence. They were spectacularly, wonderfully wrong. Ethel's words echoed in my mind. The quiet ones rise strongest. I wasn't here to cause a scene. Well, no, actually, I absolutely was here to cause a scene. The biggest scene. A scene so large it would be visible from space. Corey texted again. "Ready if you are." I replied with a single word. "Go." The resort's ocean breeze carried a faint salt tang, but inside, the air was thick with tension you could practically chew. The priest would ask his questions soon, and my answer would change absolutely everything. I gripped the clutch tighter, the USB inside ticking like a bomb, because that's essentially what it was, a carefully curated explosion of truth. They'd underestimated me for years. Misty, Brent, my parents, everyone. Today, they'd learn what truth costs. Spoiler alert, it costs everything. The ceremony hall pulsed with Miami's vibrant energy, completely unaware that it was about to host the social equivalent of a car crash. String lights cast a romantic glow over the oceanfront resort, which would have been lovely if we weren't all about to witness a family implode. The priest, Father Thomas, stood at the altar, his voice steady as the waves outside, completely unprepared for what was coming. Misty glowed in her ivory gown, because of course she did. The woman's had practiced being the center of attention. Brent stood stiff beside her in a tux I'd once helped pick, which added another layer of insult to this injury cake. The crowd of 200 buzzed, South Beach elite, family, friends, all waiting for the vows, completely unaware they were about to get dinner and a show. I sat in the back, my white dress drawing stares like moths to a particularly vindictive flame, the Chanel clutch heavy with a USB that was about to ruin several lives simultaneously. Father Thomas raised his hands, doing that thing priests do. If anyone knows any reason these two should not be joined, speak now or forever hold your peace. Silence fell, thick and electric, like the air before a lightning strike. I stood. My heels clicked on the marble floor with the sort of dramatic timing you simply cannot plan. I object, I said, voice clear as a bell, holding up the USB like it was evidence in a particularly damning murder trial. Gasps rippled through the room like a particularly scandalized Mexican wave. Misty's eyes locked on me, her smile freezing into a grimace that would have been funny if it weren't so satisfying. Father Thomas blinked, caught completely off guard. Bless him. On what grounds, Miss Carter? I walked forward, handing the USB to a nervous tech assistant who looked like he wanted to be literally anywhere else. Play this. The projector hummed to life, casting light across the hall like Judgment Day had arrived early. Ethel's face appeared first, her voice calm but firm, speaking from beyond the grave like the ghost of Christmas yet to come, except instead of showing Scrooge's future, she was about to destroy Misty's. Melinda's the only one who sees the legacy of Carter Financial. Misty's choices disqualify her. The crowd murmured, heads turning like they were watching the world's most dramatic tennis match. Next came Brent's audio, his smug tone echoing through the hall. Borrowed $200,000 from Randall's firm. Easy money. Misty's bouquet slipped from her hands, her face paling faster than someone who's just realized they've cocked up spectacularly. Bank records flashed across the screen, showing Randall's $500,000 in offshore accounts, because why have one fraud when you can have multiple? Then photos, Misty and Brent at Key West. Months before I'd caught them, arms wrapped around each other in positions that were decidedly not just friends. The 6-minute, 40-second video ended with Ethel's warning, delivered with the gravitas of a woman who'd seen it all and planned accordingly. No fraudsters. No thieves inherit my $8 million. Chaos erupted faster than you can say dysfunctional family dynamics. Misty lunged toward the projector, screaming, "Turn it off!" Like that would somehow undo everything, which showed a fundamental misunderstanding of how evidence works. Brent grabbed her arm, his voice frantic, wild-eyed as he scanned the room like he could somehow identify in silence every witness. Who recorded that? Randall stood shouting, "This is a lie." Because when confronted with video evidence of your crimes, denial is absolutely the most logical response. Very convincing, Dad. But Gerald Norton, seated amongst the guests like a very patient angel of justice, shook his head with the satisfaction of a man who's been waiting for this moment. It's all verified, Randall. The IRS already has copies. The color drained from Dad's face faster than water down a plug hole. Vicky collapsed into her seat, her fan dropping, her carefully cultivated Latin poise shattering like expensive china on a tile floor. Guests pulled out phones faster than gunslingers in a western, some live streaming on Instagram, because if a wedding implodes and it's not on social media, did it really happen? Others whispering in shock that would fuel Miami gossip columns for months. Miami's elite loved a scandal, and this was absolutely premium material. This was the sort of thing people would talk about for years. I stood still, watching the dominoes fall with the satisfaction of someone who spent months setting them up. My bracelet caught the light, Ethel's "Truth Wins" gleaming like a victory banner. 2 Miami-Dade officers entered from the back, their badges glinting ominously. Brent Lawson, Randall Carter. One said, voice calm but firm in that way police have that suggests resistance is absolutely futile. "We need you to come with us." Brent bolted toward a side exit like a particularly stupid criminal on a reality show. But Corey Blaine stood there, arms crossed, blocking the door with the smugness of someone who's been waiting for exactly this moment. "Not so fast," Corey said, clearly enjoying himself immensely. "FBI's outside. Fraud's a federal issue." Oh, this was delicious. Misty turned to me, tears streaming, mascara smudging down her face in a way that would have made a gothic novelist weep with joy. "You set me up." Her voice cracked, the vibrant charm gone, replaced by the sort of raw panic you get when your entire life implodes in front of 200 witnesses. "You did this to yourself," I replied, my tone even, controlled, channeling every courtroom drama I'd ever watched. "You took my fiancé, my plans, and thought I'd just watch. That I'd smile and wave and play the grateful sister at your stolen wedding." The crowd's phones kept rolling, capturing her meltdown in high definition, preserving it for posterity, and probably several viral TikToks. Gerald stepped forward, addressing Father Thomas with the authority of a man who's read the will so many times he could recite it in his sleep. "The will's conditions are clear. Misty's engagement to a debtor voids her claim. Melinda inherits everything." Father Thomas cleared his throat, looking like he'd accidentally wandered into a particularly intense episode of Judge Judy. "This marriage cannot proceed under these circumstances." The hall descended into absolute pandemonium, guests shouting, Misty sobbing like her heart was breaking, which, to be fair, it probably was, Brent arguing with the officers in a way that suggested he'd never actually dealt with law enforcement before. Randall tried to follow, but an officer stopped him with the sort of casual authority that comes from dealing with white-collar criminals daily. "You're needed for questioning about embezzlement," the officer said, and honestly, the look on Dad's face was worth the entire months-long investigation. Vicky clutched her handbag, staring at me like I'd personally betrayed her, which was rich considering she'd stood by whilst her favorite daughter destroyed my life. But I hadn't betrayed anyone. They betrayed Ethel's legacy, my trust, and quite frankly, themselves. I set the clutch on the altar, the USB still inside like evidence at a crime scene, and walked down the aisle, eyes forward, chin up, channeling every period drama heroine who'd ever walked away from disaster with dignity intact. The ocean breeze hit me as I stepped outside, the sound of chaos fading behind me like a particularly dramatic film score. Miami's sun burned bright, but I felt lighter than I had in years. Possibly ever. Weeks after the wedding imploded, spectacularly, publicly, in a way that would be taught in family therapy courses for years, the fallout hit like a Miami storm. Except this storm had lawyers, federal agents, and absolutely no sympathy for anyone involved. Brent's world crumbled first, and honestly, it couldn't have happened to a nicer bloke. The FBI, tipped off by my video, "You're welcome," federal law enforcement, launched a fraud investigation that moved faster than Brent had ever moved in our relationship. His confession, the one where he'd bragged about siphoning £200,000 from Dad's firm like it was monopoly money, landed him in handcuffs. Florida's laws don't mess about with credit card fraud. He faced felony charges, up to 5 years if convicted, which seemed entirely reasonable for someone who'd committed identity theft, embezzlement, and general all-round bastardry. His CPA license was revoked faster than you can say professional misconduct. His consulting gigs dried up immediately because, shockingly, people don't want to hire fraudsters to manage their money. Misty filed for divorce within a month, citing irreconcilable differences, which is lawyer speak for, "This man's about to go to prison, and I'm not sticking around for that." But whispers in South Beach's elite circles, and Miami's elite love a good whisper, said she couldn't handle his debts. She poured £80,000 into legal fees, draining her savings from her marketing job faster than a particularly aggressive payment plan. That job didn't last either, naturally. Her firm dropped her after the scandal went viral, and I mean properly viral, millions of views, think pieces about family loyalty, the whole circus. Her face was plastered across Instagram with captions like "Bride's epic meltdown" and "When karma crashes your wedding." She moved back to Mom's cramped flat in Coconut Grove, her vibrant charm fading like a cheap fake tan. Last I heard, she was working shifts at a local bar to cover rent, which was quite the come down from Miami marketing maven to serving mojitos to tourists. The universe has a sense of humor, it seems. Randall and Vicky's collapse was slower but infinitely uglier, like watching a particularly drawn-out car crash in slow motion. The IRS descended on Carter Financial after Gerald forwarded the audit files with the efficiency of a man who'd been waiting to press send for months. Randall's $500,000 in consulting fees, and those quotation marks are doing extremely heavy lifting, to offshore accounts triggered a £300,000 fine. He gambled on hiding it, but the paper trail was airtight. You'd think someone in finance would be better at covering their tracks, but apparently, arrogance makes you sloppy. The company board, still loyal to Ethel's vision because she'd actually been competent, stripped him of his title faster than you can say gross misconduct. With no assets to leverage, turns out having everything seized by the IRS leaves you somewhat financially challenged. He and Vicky lost their South Beach mansion to foreclosure. The stress fractured their marriage because nothing says true love quite like federal fraud charges. Vicky filed for divorce, unable to stomach Randall's lies any longer, though I suspect the poverty had something to do with it as well. She moved to Minnesota to live with her sister, trading Miami's glitz for a quiet suburb where presumably no one knows about her daughter's wedding disaster. Randall took a low-level analyst job at a small firm in Fort Lauderdale, a spectacular fall from his corner office overlooking Biscayne Bay. Their reputation in Miami's tight-knit community was absolutely toast. Neighbors who'd once fawned over their parties now crossed the street to avoid them, which must have been absolutely devastating for people who'd built their entire identity on social standing. Meanwhile, I stood in my new office on Brickell Avenue, Carter Financial's headquarters, with a view that cost more than most people's houses. The skyline stretched before me like a promise of everything I'd earned. Ethel's legacy, £8 million in trusts, patents, and contracts, was mine. All mine. The board had unanimously named me CEO, impressed by my steady hand, which is corporate speak for, "You're the only one who's not currently under federal investigation." I'd landed 3 major clients within weeks, all drawn to the story of a woman who'd outsmarted her family's betrayal. Turns out, people love a good revenge story, especially when it comes with solid financial planning and no criminal charges. My days filled with meetings, pitching strategies, rebuilding the firm from its slightly tarnished reputation. The work was grueling, proper 60-hour weeks, but it was mine. I traded my old flat for a penthouse with a view of the bay, the ocean a constant reminder of my fresh start, and also that I'd won. Decisively. Completely. Rhonda stopped by one evening, bringing Cuban sandwiches from a nearby cafe, because even CEOs need to eat. "You're killing it," she said, grinning like the proud best friend she was. Ethel would be proper chuffed. I smiled, glancing at the framed photo of my grandmother on my desk, her silver bracelet still on my wrist like a talisman. She planned all this, didn't she? The crafty old bird knew exactly what she was doing. Months later, a letter arrived from Misty. Her handwriting was shaky on the envelope, like her hands had been trembling. "I'm sorry," it began, which was already suspicious because Misty had never apologized for anything in her entire life. "I was wrong to take Brent, to hurt you. Can we talk?" I read it by the fireplace in my penthouse. Yes, I have a fireplace in Miami because when you're rich, logic goes out the window, the city lights twinkling outside like very expensive Christmas decorations. The word stung, not because I believed her, I'm not that stupid, but because they were too late. Too little, too late, as they say. She'd taken my prom date, my scholarship, my fiancé, always with that smirk, always excused by our parents' favoritism. Ethel had seen it all, documented every theft, every betrayal, warned me in her journal to stand firm. I held the letter over the flames, watching it curl into ash like a particularly satisfying metaphor. Some gifts don't deserve opening. Some apologies don't deserve acceptance. I blocked Misty's number, then Randall's, then Vicky's, one by one, with the ruthless efficiency of someone who's finally learned that family isn't about blood. It's about who actually gives a damn about you. They'd built their lives on taking from me, on diminishing me, on treating me like the boring, steady one who'd always be there to clean up their messes. Now they'd rebuild without me. If they could rebuild at all, I started dating again, cautiously, like someone who's been burned and is now very aware that fire is hot. Daniel, a civil engineer I'd met through Gerald, was steady, kind, debt-free, which was now apparently on my list of requirements, along with not a criminal and won't shag my sister. We grab coffee in Brickell, talk about work, life, anything but my spectacularly dysfunctional family. One night, he looked at me across the table with those earnest eyes that suggested he might actually be genuine. "You're stronger than they know," he said. It echoed Ethel's words, grounding me in a way I hadn't expected. We got engaged quietly, planning a small ceremony for December. No resorts, no crowds, no 200 witnesses waiting for someone to object. Just us, a registrar, and possibly Rhonda if she promised not to bring up the last wedding I'd attended. My focus stayed on Carter Financial, which was thriving in ways Dad's management never had. We landed a contract with a tech startup that doubled our portfolio, which was brilliant for business and also meant I could afford increasingly ridiculous penthouses. The firm thrived, and so did I, building a life free from their shadows, their expectations, their constant diminishment of everything I'd achieved. South Beach's nightlife pulsed below my penthouse, the same nightlife I'd once enjoyed with Brent, the same city that had witnessed my humiliation. But I was done with its chaos. I'd learned Ethel's lesson, the one she'd been trying to teach me through her journal, her will, her entire carefully orchestrated plan. Patience isn't weakness. It's power. Self-reliance isn't loneliness. It's freedom. They'd expected me to break, to beg for their approval, to come crawling back because family is everything. Instead, I'd claimed what was mine, the company, the money, my dignity, my entire bloody future. The letter's ashes scattered out my window, carried by the bay's breeze like the remnants of a past I was finally releasing. I looked at Ethel's photo, that stern face that had seen through everyone's nonsense. "You were right," I said softly. "Truth wins." And it had, spectacularly, publicly, in a way that would be gossiped about in Miami society for decades. So what did I learn from this spectacular mess? Well, quite a lot, actually, though I'm not sure any of it would make for good greeting card material. First, trust your instincts. If someone seems like they're taking advantage of you, they probably are. If your family constantly favors one child over another, that's not cultural differences or personality types. That's just bad parenting dressed up in multicultural clothing. Second, document everything. Ethel's journal saved my life. Well, saved my inheritance and my sanity, which amounts to the same thing. Write it down. Save the receipts. Keep the evidence. You never know when you'll need to destroy someone's wedding with a well-timed PowerPoint presentation. Third, sometimes the quiet ones really do rise strongest. Everyone underestimated me because I wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic, wasn't the one lighting up rooms with stories of beach parties. They thought steady meant pushover. They were spectacularly wrong. Fourth, inheritance conditions are brilliant. If you're writing a will and you suspect your family might be absolute disasters, put conditions in. Make them specific. Make them airtight. Ethel knew exactly what she was doing, and I benefited from her paranoia and foresight. Fifth, not all family is worth keeping. This is the hard one, the one that therapists love and greeting card companies hate. But sometimes, cutting ties is the healthiest thing you can do. Some relationships are toxic, and blood relation doesn't make them less poisonous. Sixth, revenge is a dish best served with proper legal documentation. Anyone can cause a scene. It takes real dedication to cause a scene that also stands up in court. And finally, white dresses at weddings that aren't yours are absolutely a power move, and I regret nothing. If you've ever had to cut ties to save yourself, you know this choice wasn't easy. It wasn't simple. It wasn't the sort of thing you do on a whim. What boundaries have you set? What family members have you had to distance yourself from for your own sanity? Share in the comments. I promise I'm reading them while sipping very expensive wine in my penthouse, feeling absolutely zero regret about my choices. Subscribe for more stories like this, tales of family dysfunction, spectacular revenge, and the importance of good legal representation. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next installment. Next week, we're diving into My Brother Stole My Inheritance at Our Father's Funeral, which sounds absolutely horrific, and I cannot wait to tell you about it. Because apparently, my family isn't the only spectacularly dysfunctional one out there, and that's oddly comforting. Until then, remember, the quiet ones are watching. We're taking notes, and when we finally snap, we snap strategically. Truth wins. Eventually, with proper planning and a decent lawyer. Cheers. A year later, I received an email that made me laugh so hard I nearly spilt my morning coffee all over my very expensive desk. It was from a producer at a streaming service, one of the big ones, the kind that makes documentaries about disasters and calls them unmissable television. They wanted to make a documentary about the Miami wedding disaster, as it had apparently become known in certain circles. They found the viral footage, because of course it was still circulating on the internet. These things never truly die. and thought it would make compelling viewing. I declined, obviously. Some things are private, even if they were witnessed by 200 people and posted on Instagram by at least 70 of them. But the offer made me realize something rather profound. My family's dysfunction had become entertainment for strangers. Their downfall was now content. And whilst I felt a twinge of something, guilt, satisfaction, indigestion from too much Cuban food, I mostly felt nothing. That's when I knew I'd truly moved on. Daniel and I got married in December as planned. Small ceremony, just us and a handful of actual friends who hadn't stolen anything from me. Rhonda was there, naturally, serving as my witness and providing running commentary about how this wedding was significantly less dramatic than the last one I'd attended. Gerald came as well, bringing Ethel's journal as a gift, which should have been morbid but was actually rather touching. No one objected. No USB drives were deployed. No police showed up. It was almost disappointingly normal, which was absolutely perfect. I kept the business cards I'd received after the wedding disaster. Yes, business cards, because apparently publicly destroying your family makes you something of a cult figure in certain entrepreneurial circles. People wanted to hire me, to learn from me, to bottle whatever ruthless efficiency I displayed and sell it as a leadership course. I turned them all down except one, a request to speak at a women's business conference about leveraging adversity into opportunity, which sounded properly corporate and meaningless but actually paid quite well. I gave a 20-minute talk about resilience, strategic thinking, and the importance of documentation. I didn't mention the wedding specifically, but everyone in that room knew exactly what I was talking about. The standing ovation suggested they approved. Misty tried reaching out again last month, through a mutual acquaintance this time, having apparently learned that I'd blocked her everywhere else. The message was typically Misty, dramatic, self-pitying, and utterly convinced that enough time had passed for me to forgive and forget. I haven't responded. I won't respond. Because here's the thing about boundaries. They only work if you actually maintain them. And I've become rather excellent at maintenance. Some stories don't get neat endings. Some families don't reconcile. Some betrayals don't get forgiven, no matter how much time passes or how many apologetic letters get written. And that's perfectly fine. Life isn't a film where everyone hugs it out in the final scene whilst inspirational music plays. Sometimes the happy ending is simply walking away and never looking back. And honestly, I've never been happier. Cheers.